From the Bakersfield Californian, this is the Renegade Report.
Oh, welcome to this edition of the Renegade Report with the last of the Bowser Boys, first of the Grider Gang, and the former general in Chudy's army. It's Kenny Calvin. And today, even though I'm a gridiron guy, I got one of my favorite coaches on campus, Coach Tim Painton of baseball. How you doing, Coach?
I'm doing great, Kenny. Thanks for having me.
Well, thanks for showing up. You know, we've been off for a couple of weeks. We took a Thanksgiving break. We also allowed students to have time to study, so we didn't have a show last week as well. So I appreciate you coming because I didn't think I was going to get another show before the break. So,
well, glad to be here.
Glad to be here. Well, Coach, let's talk about timeline. I know the world is listening. We got listeners on the radio, streaming through Bakersfield.com. One of the things I want to talk about before I even get into your history of a coach and former player is I appreciate how welcoming you were to me and have been over the past 3 years since I've joined the sports media team, allowing me to come assist with the PA announcing. You always make things so comfortable, so I appreciate that, Coach.
Well, thank you. I had the opportunity to watch you play at Bakersfield College. Wow. I've been here a long time, so remembered what a good player you were, remembered the impact you made on Bakersfield College, so you're always welcome.
Well, Coach, that's the kind of thing that makes it, you know, I'm getting emotional just hearing you say that because reflecting on that experience, it's been 24 years since I was a player, and you never know the impact that you have until you come back. So Thanks for that, Coach. I appreciate you. Yes. You got me crying in the first 2 minutes. All right, but Coach, let's talk timeline. Coaching experience, where are you from overall?
Grew up in Southern California, played baseball at Fullerton College, had the opportunity from there to play at Fresno State. Signed professionally out of there, played in the Giants and Angels organizations for a few years, and really never left the Valley. When pro ball came to an end, Fresno State was hiring another full-time assistant, and was fortunate to land that position, and left there in the early 90s and came to Bakersfield College and never left.
Wow, beautiful experience. Me as a third generation, or second generation Renegade, but third time professional, you know, as a former player, coach, and now media professional, I can definitely appreciate the fact that you've stuck it out and stayed to continue to build this hollow program for one of the greatest institutions in the country.
Well, Bakersfield's a great community, and when we moved here, my kids were very little, and what we found was a great community to raise our family, and both of my kids were, very young. My daughter was a year old, and my son was 4. Wow. When we moved here, so they went through schools here, and so this is home for us, and you know, it's just how it turned out.
Well, during the break, you talked about, you know, as a Fresno State coach, you had the experience of coaching one of my mentors and people that I looked up to as a former driller, Mr. Michael Stewart. How was that experience coaching the legend?
You know what, a phenomenal experience. If you know him as a human being, he's just an outstanding human being.
Absolutely.
And let's start there. And then athletically, to be able to play both Division I football and Division I baseball, he was drafted baseball-wise as well.
Wow.
And to have the NFL career that he had and so forth, phenomenal athlete, better person. And it was a pleasure to have the opportunity to work with him on a daily basis.
Well, we have a couple things in common that I just told you about. I coached his son, Michael Stewart III.
Absolutely.
And he was a former driller, football player. He also played multiple sports. But just like you said, one of the things that made me most impressed with him was his character.
Yes.
He was a player that you could depend on and somebody that you knew you can count on when things were going tough. He was a leader on the field for us. Even when he lost his starting position at one moment, he was still a leader on the field and just as vocal as anybody. And it's great to hear that the apple doesn't fall far from the tree, right?
Absolutely.
Right. So let's talk baseball, Coach. You know, I had the experience of announcing games a couple years ago. I would come in and sub for Mr. Lynch. Shout out to the Lynch mob. But watching you guys somewhat struggle a couple years ago And me not being a former baseball guy, I was so excited to watch you guys compete at a high level, which you did every week, every game. Seeing the growth from 2 years ago to last year, when I had the opportunity to come in, it was just phenomenal. It made me so proud to be part of the process, even though I'm just calling the batting lineup and just being part of the process. But how did it feel for you to watch your guys go from not being able to finish as well to going ahead and just playing at maximum output?
Well, I think, Kenny, more than anything else, in our sport, the guy on the mound is a determining factor in every game. And a couple of years ago, we were short on the mound, as we were last year. But we had two freshmen step up last year, and Nate Ortiz and Lane Cowan, that kind of shouldered the responsibility. And Frank Villasenor, we have those three people back, and those are the three guys that got the most innings on the mound for us. So it's a good place to start this year. But I think the turnaround, we had Kyle Willman, our catcher last year, was a main part of our offense. And he grew tremendously between his freshman and sophomore year. We had Tim Billingsley, who was just a DH for us. Very bright kid, 4-year player. He had 2 season-ending injuries where he came in and he goes, "Coach, I want to finish my sophomore year." And I go, "You've got 2 AA degrees already." And so he stuck around to finish and compete his second year. And from a leadership standpoint, he was off the charts. And everybody just kind of pulled together and made it happen a little bit last year. And fortunately, we have a lot of those people back this year.
Yeah, great staff. You know, you guys keep a tightly knit unit. You know, it's not a lot of horseplay going on around there when I show up. You know, you guys are all about business, and that's one of the things that I appreciated. You know, as a former football guy, we don't get to be around the field as closely as you guys are, being that we're way up top. Right. But having an opportunity to walk around, get your lineups, see the professionalism that exists amongst your players and staff was inspiring, and it just made me proud to be part of the process. So let's talk about some of those players that are coming back. You talked about Frankie. You talked about Kyle, of course. Now you got Cam returning, right? Yes.
Cameron and Kyle, for those that don't know, are twin brothers out of Ridgeview High School, and they both came in as freshmen. And Cam had valley fever last year, so had to sit out a year. And in hindsight, I think it was kind of a blessing in disguise because those two young men have been identified together their entire life.
Absolutely.
And they were able to separate. Kyle really grew as a player last year, and I think we're seeing the same growth in Cam this year. They get to be their own person instead of being a team.
So important.
And I'm proud of Kyle. He's gone on. He's at Campbell University.
Beautiful.
Cameron is getting a lot of Division I offers as well, or interest at this point, and we're really excited to have him back because he's one of the top defenders in the state of California.
Well, one of my favorite families in the history of families. You know, his uncle Gary Willman was my college roommate, you know, and some of my moments where I was straying off track after my sophomore year, he was one of the people who inspired me to let me know that, hey, Ken, you're bigger than Bakersfield. Don't allow this to be the end of your career. So his motivation put me in a position to continue to go on. So shout out to Gary Willman if he's listening in the Willman family. But even the father, Eric Willman, you know, he's a former baseball player at South High. You definitely know they got the skills and talent, honestly, you know, being that they're second-generation players. But just like we said, it's more about the character and the will and desire to be better people than they are athletes will put them in a position to be successful, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And they're both equally as good as a student as they are an athlete.
Nice.
Cam has a 3.7, 3.8 GPA.
Wow.
Kyle had the same. And it creates opportunity. And without the academic end, the athletic opportunity sometimes goes away.
Oh, yeah, it
disappears. So they've put themselves in a great position, and Kyle's experiencing it. Cam will experience it because they've done a very good job in the classroom.
Absolutely, and I'm glad you hit on that too, Coach, because, you know, as coaches, we're so focused on scheduling that it's easy to discount the academic component. But we don't do that around here in Bakersfield College. You know, and even when I was a player, being a knucklehead, wanting to be a rap artist during the spring. I remember I would do so well during the fall, and then the spring comes and my grades are tanking because I wasn't ingesting what the coaches instilled in me, and I paid for that later. You know, and I ended up being put in a position to have to go to a different school than my playing ability could have put me in. I was a preseason All-American, but however, the fact that I didn't ingest what my coaches instilled in me right away, I had to wait a little bit later, and then a year later I come back, hey, coach, you were right. Now I want to kick it in gear. Now I'll get straight A's over the summer because I got to take 18 units to leave. You know, know. So great point, coach, and I'm glad you brought that up because it's extremely vital. You know, we can't be athletes without the academic component, and it's definitely what we're going to be using after the game is over because guess what? It's going to end faster than we expect, right?
Absolutely. It ends for everybody.
Absolutely. I tell people that all the time. They're like, Kenny, you were a great player. What happened? Hey, one day you play your last game. That's just what happens, no matter how old you are and how good you were. So let's fast forward to season expectations, Coach. You had such a great year last year. I know we get started January. We open up with Moore Park, right?
Correct.
How excited are you looking forward to the opening?
I'm very excited. Again, we return a significant amount of players that got a lot of playing time last year. We return 5 guys on the mound. We brought in, I think, maybe our best collection of freshman pitching that we've had in a number of years. Then you start with Cam being back. He's one of the top defenders in the state. Hector Ruvalcaba that played last year, played short. He can play anywhere in the infield. Zach Williams had a great year for us offensively last year. He's back. Shanti Ross is back in center field. So we returned some very key pieces to, I think, with what we have coming in, make a very, very good ball club.
I'm excited to hear the lineup and hear you say those names because I was torturing Ruvalcaba's name all last year.
That's okay. I still do it.
So as an announcer, I definitely like to get that out the way. But also talking about Ashanti Ross, he was one of my favorite players to watch play because my wife's name is Ashanti, and I would always make a joke about that in the booth. But just talking about the guys you come back, enjoying Zach, watching him perform at the base. He's just such an outstanding bat. I definitely remember seeing him make some key plays at moments that were just outstanding. And being that we have one of the best baseball facilities in the country, what better way to make it more special than putting the best players in the country on that field. So, Coach, I appreciate everything you do. We're getting ready to go to break, but anything else you want to talk about before we head to break?
No, I think Ryan Dickerson, who you will talk to here shortly, is going to be behind the plate for us, and he is almost a carbon copy of Kyle Willman.
Wow.
So they were good buddies when they were here. We kind of slowed Ryan's progress down. We redshirted him to allow them to not be in the same class and split time.
Okay.
So he's going to be an exceptional player for us as well. And I have to throw him in with the returning players because he's a third-year guy now.
Yes.
And somebody that's going to make a big impact for us.
Well, Coach, I'm excited. I can't wait to come out. Whether I'm working or not, I'll be there to support you guys. And if anything I can do outside of baseball as far as the branding and continued expansion to get more butts in the seats, I'll be all over that, Coach.
Thank you, Kenny.
I appreciate you, man. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you.
Thank you. Hey, this is Kenny Calvin. We'll be right back after the break with the bulk of the returners from BC Baseball right after this.